Okay, welcome. I am super excited to have the Lucinda Halpern, author of Get Signed, Find an Agent, Land a Book Deal, and Become a Published Author. It's just like it never shows up quite right on the screen. This came out, Lucinda, February, 6th of this year out of Hay House, yeah?
It sure did. Yeah, it did. Just a month ago, my baby is 1 month old.
All right, so everybody that comes to me, everybody in my audience, they dream of creating a book for their business, right? This is a book
Mhm.
for your business. This is a really well written, really well crafted, super readable book that is designed to bring in right fit clients. So it's been out in the world for a month. What's happened in your business? What's the scene where you
Yeah,
are?
I'm so happy you asked that because it's not a question I get on most interviews. And as I've said on social media, the idea that a book can change the lives of people that a book touches, but also your own life and your own business is something that agents tell authors every day, but never experience themselves. So now I'm like living the journey that my authors have had. And it's giving me so much compassion and so much insight. Um, so my business is completely transformed and in the best possible ways. What I did expect that when it came out, we'd be put on the map, put on the radar in a bigger way than we already, we have a brand and we have credibility in New York publishing, but globally or in the Midwest or, wherever other writers live, they've been finding this book and they've been learning the 6 step model and implementing it so thoughtfully in their query letters that when we receive pitches now, we're like, whoa, this talent has gone from here to there. And so we're reading much more. Our alleged slush pile, our proverbial slush pile is more active and more full, but with good queries. Why? Because people have read this book and they've done the work. Um, so that's been fantastic. And just by way of getting out everywhere you can as an author, people find you and you're just attracting talent every which way. The other thing that has really changed is because I have this course and coaching business that I adore, that is highly specific. Agents don't really offer this service, which is not about what you do, Anne, which is craft and outlining and book coaching. This is about presentation and marketing. How are you presenting your big idea? Are you presenting the strengths in your platform and your credentials? And this kind of coaching doesn't exist. It doesn't exist from an industry insider. This has been my passion since starting Lucinda Literary, my company 13 years ago, to touch a broad swath of writers, empower them, educate them, bust all the myths for them, and let them be seen and heard, because publishing has just been long too prohibitive to new talent, to people who don't understand how to break in. So that's all been a passion for me, a passion enterprise that was the inspiration for Get Signed, allowed me all of that road testing that I advocate that writers do. And so it's brought in a lot of students in that community, and it's brought in all of this talent, and it's brought in speaking. So it's really firing on all
It's
cylinders, which is
it's
great.
super sexy, and I can also imagine it's like, what, how am I going to have to change my business model? Who I'm going to
Totally.
mean, like all of the
Yeah.
questions that
Yeah.
people have. So staying light on your feet. You touched on something really interesting that I think a lot of first time authors don't realize. Like people want, like, you found a book. It's like this: people want traditional publishing house deals. So you know what people want, and you are telling them exactly how this is done. And one of the things that you teased out in your book to some degree is that there's this old expectation that when an author gets a publishing deal, they're going to get an editor and they're going to be working hand in hand with the editor to craft their manuscript to really make it shine. And it's editors in-house are doing less and less of that, and agents are taking a heavier hand in that. And I
Mhm.
think that you differentiate yourself from other agents, other agencies, in that you have a pretty heavy hand in that. So
Yeah.
I'd love if you could tease that out, like how much editing is too much?
Mhm.
What is, how do you see the book in the rough and decide I'm going to put the time and effort into this? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. These are great questions. So I'm an editor at heart, as equally as I am a deal maker. These are my two loves, my two passions. So I think if I see something that has that big idea that I talk about, so in Get Signed, I talk about these three keys, and you only need two of the three. You need great writing, you need a big idea, or you need an undeniable platform. Now, there is literally one writer I've ever represented who has all three of these things. So most people have two, and that's great and that's sufficient. So if I spot a really great platform, by which I mean anything from thousands of social media followers to thousands of people on your email list to your network has really great people in it who can be your sort of megaphones, to you're highly credentialed and you're leading the research in XYZ. You've had a lot of media, you have a great podcast, like whatever it may be, however I'm evaluating platform for your genre, I'm interested, and there's something there that I can work with, whether I'm pairing you with a ghostwriter or a collaborator, whether I'm developing your big idea with you. That's where I get in the weeds and get very excited about the editorial. Likewise, if there is a big idea and great writing. So every writer needs an editor, and they may even have you as an editor, and then an agent comes along and says, let's make this tweak. Like agents, or I can only speak for myself, we're big picture thinkers. So there could be a suggestion we make that just takes this from a book that won't sell, but has the potential, to a book that commands a six-figure book advance. And it's that big picture feedback that I think is actually most vital for a project success. If I see that sort of diamond in the rough, it is worth my time to do what I love, which is to edit.
So let's come back to the idea of a big idea. Can
Yeah.
you can you tease out what you mean by big idea?
Yeah. So for us, it really applies to fiction and nonfiction alike. There are two rules for it. The rules end up being four parts total. So the first is that it has universal themes, but a unique point of view. That is a way of saying that it has a proven popular landscape, like universal themes could include coming of age, or grief and loss, and transformation, or um, resilience. I mean, there's so many things that readers come to time and time again, coupled with some unique spin that you have on it, some distinct voice that you lend, or easily overlooked perspective, little known world. Like, what is it that you are contributing that is new and different? You'll probably hear me say that 5 times over this interview. Then you have to think about what's timely and timeless. That's the balance that I'm looking for writers to strike. Of course, Get Signed offers these exercises, these ways for you to go about taking your own book, putting it on paper. How is my idea timely? How is my idea timeless? We know why it's important to meet the trends of the day and the conversation of the day, because that's what you're teaching too, Anne. But what writers may not understand is the timelessness factor is what publishers are actually after, because they want something that can resonate in 2, 3, 5, 10 years time, still touch people, still touch a chord. And that sort of brings us back to the universal themes, right? Which is why all of these are interwoven. Like love and loss isn't going anywhere in 5 years. So you really just want to be sure that you are meeting both of these imperatives. Um, and that's how I think about a big idea. So we've got plenty of examples of that in the book. I can tell
Yeah,
any of
you actually you brought one up that I thought was fabulous, and I went
Yeah,
out
tell me.
and I immediately bought the book. The
Ooh.
book was platonic.
Oh
And the
yeah.
book was this, not like, it was written by a psychotherapist, a PsyD, I assume, if I can remember properly. And she was taking the idea of attachment theory, which I see trending all over the place. Every time I'm on Instagram, I'm seeing people talk about attachment theory, and it's showing up in all these interesting places, particularly among psychologists who are getting a platform built out. And so it's trending,
Mhm.
attachment theory. but she took a unique angle because typically attachment theory is something that a psychologist works with in the romantic field.
Right.
They're evaluating somebody's attachment style to a love interest or a partner, but they're taking it. This author took it to platonic relationships, so that trending,
Yes.
but that unique angle.
Mhm.
I love it.
Yes. It's such a great textured and with that title, I call these title concepts because the title is the concept. And
It
so
delivers on the promise. It delivers the
exactly,
promise.
exactly. Yep.
So, yes, you and I are both, you know, we're also paying attention to trends because trends are
Mhm,
telling us
mhm.
what people are interested in, what people are reading. But I'm convinced you have a much deeper access to trends. You are much more able to future cast.
Mm, mm.
And how are you future casting? Is it the relationships and the conversations that you're having with publishing houses? How are you, like, why are you uniquely positioned to have a finger on the pulse of trends and
Yeah.
ways of angling around that stuff for a unique position?
Right. So I could answer that in a variety of ways, but I would say that I do rely first and foremost on my relationships. I've built over a decade of relationships in New York publishing where I'm talking to editors every day and I hear what they're looking for. And, they're just funny examples. And I'd say actually I have relationships with Hollywood producers and co-agents too. And it's funny, the last time I was in LA, like an agent said to me, well, college love stories are just out. No one wants, networks don't want to see them anymore. And I was like, that's funny. When we last met a few months ago, that was all you were looking for. So, these trends sort of pass. I could give an example if you want me to future cast business books, which I love to do. I love to do books by entrepreneurs. And I have long sensed that the organizational book only is kind of a dying book, right? I mean, there's still like business publishers are folding, and there are still a few that will do these kinds of organizational books. But the books that people really want to read are those that cross over to affect individuals. So you think about a book like Hidden Potential by Adam Grant. Sure, he's a Wharton professor and he speaks to like this is something that makes obvious sense in corporate America, but you could be thinking about it. What's so great about the book is there are educators who can learn from this. There are parents that can learn from this. Those are the sorts of business books, or in the industry called soft business books, that really make sense and really are exciting to publishers as a trend. And if you think about the pandemic making all of our work and our lives sort of intermingled forever, you can no longer think about work in a silo. You have to be thinking about the life outside of work as well. And that's why the book, like a business book, needs to speak to that. It can't just be about your organization and the way things are done within it.
Oh, I
So
love that. We got to
yeah,
be able to extrapolate for other
yeah.
areas of our life, and the easier you make it as an author to extrapolate those ideas to
But in
another.
terms of trends, I don't recommend that authors come to me and say, well, what are the trends I want to meet them? That's not an indication that they're visionaries or that they know their audience particularly well, because they should be steeped in what their particular audience wants and what the trends are in those conversations. So agents and publishers rely on authors to tell them, what are people turning to for? What do they need right now? What's missing in their lives? Where do they need information? And we're expecting the authors to tell us that, to tell us the trends in their space. So it's a bit of an inside out approach and not the other way around.
Yeah, like one of the things I was reading lately, because I had people come to me and I want to write a book about happiness and how to achieve happiness. And I was just reading the other day, like happiness is out and the state of awe is in.
True. Yeah.
And
It's
I'm
a
like,
different spin on the same thing, right?
it's a different spin on the same thing, but just a slightly different angle.
Yes.
What is the absolute wrong approach? Somebody who's all enthusiastic and thinks it's all about grit and all about tenacity. We talk about tenacity. What's the worst thing you can do when approaching you?
You know, if you are only thinking about why you are wanting to write this book and your passion behind it. And this is most evident in memoir. Want to tell your life story because you find it fascinating, and in a very valiant way, you want to share it with the world. And often these are people who've been through trauma of some kind, loss and affliction, cancer. I mean, really sort of, refuge. I mean, we receive really moving stories. The problem is that they're not latching onto what their reader wants. They haven't identified how this serves a reader. So a pitch is not what your book is about, it's why we should care. It's why someone who doesn't know you should care. And if you haven't identified that on the ground floor, it's an immediate pass for agents. So even 10 years ago when I started as an agent, and we'd received these just like horrible and painful memoirs, which people again feel the need to tell for their own catharsis, and I get it. And I think it's incredibly brave. My boss then was like, can't take it on. And now you're looking at an even more prohibitive landscape for that sort of book. Why? Because celebrity memoirs are dominating the shelves, and because people want escapism. They want to get away from our world, and they want to go to fun places and have adventures, and they want to watch Netflix, and they want to play video games. So unless your memoir can provide that sense of relief and escape and levity, whether it's through humor or through transformation or like where that person ends up that can inspire us, then you will be seen as a heavy,
Yeah.
painful, why does someone want to spend time with this and endure more pain? And I
Yeah.
think that's really critical for memoirists to know. So that's kind of the common thing that I would recommend. I really want to bring that home to people who are writing in any sort of genre, that it's why a reader should care, identifying how a reader comes to this book and what they get out of it, what is the payoff to the reader. In terms of approach, it's not dissimilar. The person that comes to you saying, I am passionate about this book, but doesn't begin with, here's my reason for telling it, here's how I'm positioned to write it, here's what the conversation is right now and how my book can enter, is coming at it from the wrong vantage point.
Yeah. I hear that too. Like I'm really passionate about it. Like, why do
Yeah,
we care what you're
it's a
passionate?
job out. It's a job application.
Yeah.
This is
What?
about the win-win for the person who's about to work with you speculatively, not make a living until we sell it. So this has to prove that there is commercial value, because going back to your very first point, this is a business.
You you said an interesting phrase. I kind of want you to tease it out.
Mhm.
You said publishing is a look-alike business. What do you mean that publishing is a look-alike business?
Yeah. So that old adage, that Hollywood stereotype of this is X meets Y, is
Hmm.
absolutely how people talk in the industry. And it's how people get most excited. And so this book, Get Signed, is, disguised as how to create the perfect pitch, is actually about two other things. It's about how to create the foundation for a timely and timeless book, a great book that has a commercial audience, and also how to use the shortcuts, the secrets, and the language of agents to advocate for yourself to get your own book sold. So with that in mind, if agents speak in the language of comps, comparative titles, the X meets Y, then you can use this tactic in your query letters. So that's how we get excited by the biggest promise of the book. Oh, this book looks a lot like another book that was successful that I represented. Or if you're in the publisher position, it's almost exclusively done on comps. If they've had success with a particular book and an agent shops them something that looks a lot like it, boom, you're probably in business. And on the reverse end of things, if you're shopping a book and they've had a terrible time with it, you probably have bad luck that they're not going to go for your book. And it's not personal, it's business. It's the fact that they clearly weren't, equipped to publish that well, or the timing was bad, or whatever it was, But that's what I mean by it's a lookalike business. If you look like something else that is successful, then you have a really good chance of getting in with an agent and a publisher that published that book.
Yeah, you had said something one time that I loved, and because I keep hearing the same names over and over again when I'm talking to people. This book is Mark Manson meets Glennon Doyle.
Oh, wow.
All right. Everybody wants to be Mark Manson,
Yes. Yeah.
and everybody wants to be Glennon Doyle. Why is that the wrong approach?
It's just way too stratospheric. Like these are just huge successes, basic literary celebrities at this point. So the platform is pretty incomparable if you're a first-time writer. I mean, I would suggest that as a first-time author, you say, I am like XYZ, someone who started a lot like you, right? And maybe it's that you have published an award-winning short story, and that went on to be an anthology, to use your example, and you're trying to prove the marketability for your anthology, right? You can then say, well, this comp looks a lot like mine, and it makes a compelling argument for why people should take a financial risk.
Yeah. So I've asked you a bunch of questions. What question do you wish I had asked you?
Ooh, ooh. Um, a question that I really think is valuable for writers to know is why has a book like this never been done before? Why has an agent ever divulged this information? Why wasn't it written 5 or 10 years ago?
Yeah,
And
because I don't see comps on your book.
there aren't. There
There aren't
aren't.
comps. So
Yeah.
you have broken trail.
Yeah. No, now let me say that listen, thinking like an agent and a publisher, of course you need to identify the comps because without that, you can't prove the case for what to spend, right? Editors are creating profit and loss statements for what they expect to spend and what they expect to make based on books like it. So in fact, the comp for my book, published by my publisher Hay House, which is now a part of Penguin Random House, is the book You Were Born to Write by my friend Kelly Notaris. And it's very similar. New authors entering this industry, how do they know that they're on the right path? So that would be a comp title for mine. But the reason that my publisher took me on, and it's a pretty funny story that, has applications for new writers, is because there was a market need for it. It wasn't because I had some irrefutable platform, and it wasn't because I was some great writer. It was because the idea was big, because there was a complete void in the market for someone from this perspective, this expertise, writing a current book, right? There are other books by agents, but they were written at a different time when publishing wasn't contending against podcasts and social and free content everywhere, right? So they said, okay, there's a void, we can fill it with this. And there's this audience of writers because so many people want to write a book. So it's actually not as niche as one would think, because people of all spheres want to write books.
Yeah. So back to extrapolation.
Yeah.
Even if the audience member, you who are listening, even if you don't have this grand vision of getting a traditional book deal, even if you've decided you're going to go hybrid or you're going to self-publish and you don't even want to mess around with a nonfiction book proposal or the query process, your book, Lucinda, is so valuable
Thank you.
because it is essentially teaching people how to write a reader-centric book
Yeah.
that will provide value, that will get read, and that will bring people into your world eager to buy your products and services and whatnot
Yeah.
because
Yes.
you,
Yes.
you've helped them. So regardless of your desire, you've got to read Lucinda's book. And if you are a writer, there's something called karma that when you have a book on the market, your book is going to show up as a needle in the haystack through reviews. So you do a good deed. If you like a book, if you read a book, leave a review on Amazon or Goodreads or whatever platform you purchase that book, because that is how books like Lucinda's, books like yours, books like mine are going to be seen by other people and go viral and that's how we that's how we
Thank you.
that's how we save the world one book at a time.
I love it. I want to add, I know we're wrapping up, but I want to add to that to say that the hashtag, so you've seen me on social media, navigating it along with all the other newbies. I'm at Lucinda Halpern, and I post a lot on LinkedIn and somewhat on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And I love this hashtag authors supporting authors. And what I've tried to do with this experience is really pay it forward. Everything that I'm learning does not need to be proprietary. As I learn it, I get to share it in real time and I get to see how people are responding to it. And that is a huge gift of social media that again, I sort of like would talk the talk before I walked the walk of saying to authors, well, you need social media, but I can't really tell you why because I'm not on it. Well, now I see what it's actually doing, the impacts that it's having. One of my authors who I loved working with, Paul Jarvis, once taught me, and says in his book, Company of One, teach everything you know. And I live by that, right? There is nothing that needs to be like mine for the launch of this book. Every successful strategy and every challenge I faced along the way, I am sharing so that other authors can be supported by that, so that I'm literally creating the playbook in real time. So, so that's what's actually worked with the Amazon reviews is people want to get in on that mission of helping other writers and the many writers who are just stymied, confused, mystified, stuck in the world of like, I don't know what to do or get started, or I'm out there querying agents and no one's getting back to me, right? And then they read this book and they rethink and they try again and they realize they are getting through. They got that first win of someone opening and responding to their email and
I
considering the work.
I want to tease something else out that you're doing.
Yeah.
You're a busy chick. You're like you're a busy chick and you're running a business and it's got a lot of moving parts and pieces. And as a busy person, showing up on social media and launching a book is something, right? It's a job. And so I'm always talking to my authors, watch how people are launching their book, watch how they're promoting their book, watch how they've written it, they've published it, and how they're out there talking about the book, talking about the content, because you do an awesome job.
Oh, thank
You do
you.
an awesome job. And like, we need to model for other people how this is done because, you got to walk the
And
talk.
it's experimentation, and the value, the gift I find in it is hearing from you, as in your audience, and how people are responding to the messaging. So here's something I learned from launching this book that I had no idea. And it kind of touches on what you said. People pick this up. I'm going to hold it again and be ruthlessly self-promotional, as I would advise any author of mine to do. Um, Few people, like a lot of people come to this because they want to solve the problem for themselves of whether they actually are cut out for traditional publishing or whether they should self-publish. And it's a question I get asked all the time. And they read this book and it relieves them of this pressure they felt to traditionally publish, or it motivates them. The other thing that I think is just kind of uncanny and fun as I'm doing these events and these interviews on social is that people, apparently, this statistic found by my author, only 3% of people actually finish the book they were writing. So the majority of people I'm actually meeting with, they're not even on the query trail yet. They're still writing the book. And this book is motivating them to finish. So it's just like this wonderful, rich experiment of what you think people need may not actually be what they need. This is like proving something else that I didn't think was ahead of me.
Yeah. So again, even if you don't plan on going traditional, this is gonna benefit you. Buy it and read it. I love that you took the time out to
Thank you, Anne.